Saw friends, welcome back to Hobby Vomit. It's me, Matt, and very happy to be doing another book review today. So today I'm going to be reviewing Holly, Ollie, Holly by Stephen King. You know, the king himself. We're done. We did it. We finally are caught up on Holly Gibney series. And yeah, so this is the latest installment in that until next month, May of 2025, when Never Flinch comes out. That's going to be Stephen King's newest book. As the time at the time of this video, and I believe it is confirmed that it is a Holly Gibney story. But other than that, we are caught up. So yeah, I wanted to review this book. So as always on Hobby Vomit, I'm going to be reviewing this book using our BARF system. If you're unfamiliar, there are 4 categories that we'll go through. BARF. B is believable. How believable are the characters in their setting? A is appeal. How appealing is the book? R is rhythm. What's the pacing and plotting? Which is the pacing and plotting of the book? And then F is feeling. How did the book make me feel? And so I'll score each of those categories out of 5. I'll talk about them spoiler free first, give you the score, then give you my overall score for the book, the average of those 4 categories. I'll give you my little pitch in case you've not read it as to why you should not read this book, and then I'll go into spoiler territory. So yeah. So let me pull out my notes here. It's very minimal notes just from my scores and stuff. So also, like always, I'm just going to read the synopsis that's on Goodreads just so you have an idea of what this book is about. So, Holly by Stephen King. I'm just going to skip the first paragraph. And just says, when Penny Doll calls the Finders Keepers Detective Agency, hoping for help locating her missing daughter, Holly is reluctant to accept the case. Her partner, Pete, has COVID. Her very complicated mother has just died. And Holly is meant to be on leave. But something in Penny Doll's desperate voice makes it impossible for Holly to turn her down. Mere blocks from where Bonnie Doll disappeared live Professors Rodney and Emily Harris. They are the picture of bourgeois respectability, married octogenarians devoted to each other, and semi-retired lifelong academics. But they are harboring an unholy secret in the basement of their well-kept, book-lined home, one that may be related to Bonnie's disappearance. And it will prove nearly impossible to discover what they are up to. They are savvy, they are patient, and they are ruthless. Holly must summon all her formidable talents to outthink and outmaneuver the shockingly twisted professors in this chilling new masterwork from Stephen King. So yeah, that is the synopsis of Holly by Stephen King. So this is technically on here, it's called Holly Gibney number 3, which I guess The Outsider is 1, then If It Bleeds is 2, and now this is 3. Even though I'm sure most of you know the Bill Hodges trilogy, Holly is a character in that as well. So yeah, this isn't anything new for Holly. It's a crime, like a true crime novel. So yeah, let's get into my review. So we're going to start with B in BARF for believable. How believable are the characters in their setting? So this is Stephen King's strong suit, right? He writes incredible characters. His character work is, almost unmatched. So I gave this a 4.75 out of 5. It's not his best, it's not perfect character work, but it's very, very good, like always. So Holly, I'm a Holly fan. I like Holly. This was the first Holly book that she has an entire book where she is the main character. And that's really my biggest gripe, honestly, is that in the novella If It Bleeds, I think she did a great job of carrying. She's a character with a lot of quirks. Yeah, she just has a lot of quirks. And yeah, I think she's a lovable character. Even those quirks, she doesn't curse. She always says that she's not supposed to be smoking cigarettes, but she smokes cigarettes here in like a way she knows it's bad. But yeah, just she just has some like funny quirks. She's this is set during COVID times, and so very particular about her masks and gloves and all that. So I think all of those Hollyisms in this book are extremely fitting, especially this is exactly how I imagine Holly would act during COVID. And so I think he nailed it. And then, she surrounds herself with, there's a large cast of characters. And I think this is really what Holly needs. And I almost wish she had a little bit more of it in this book. Is I think she does better as like a main supporting character, where she's really in like half of the book kind of thing, just like in The Outsider. I think that's her strong suit when she's supporting someone else in the same way, right? Even if like the other person she's supporting is also just like a half main character, they just support each other throughout. And I think that's really Holly's strong suit. But in this one, she's really the main character, and I think that hurts it a little bit. But yeah, so Holly, I like Holly. All the characters' work is good. The villains are great. I really like the villains in this, which I guess I won't say who it is or how many there are or anything like that. But I think the villain work is great, and the Robinsons are in this as well, and I really like. This made me like the Robinsons a lot more. They've kind of always been there, and they haven't always felt entirely necessary. But I really like, especially particularly Barbara in this book. I think Barbara was a really strong character and like almost reached that supporting character that I needed. I just needed maybe a little bit more of it of her and her little like tangent story. But yeah, I think Holly's relationship, you kind of get some more just history with her mother. And I think that kind of character work really just develops Holly in a great way. And so, yeah, I think if you are into good character work, I mean, you're going to find it with a Stephen King. Like, there is a ton of great character work and ranged character work in this, I think. I don't think it's a very one note or anything, even though Holly can kind of sometimes feel a little one note. I think it's the characters that he surrounds her with that kind of carry her. So, yeah, 4.75 out of 5. I mean, I can't imagine I'm going to find very many King books less than, 4.5 or something. I think that's just a strong suit. So appeal. This is the lowest scoring category for me. It was a 3 out of 5. This book doesn't do anything unique in any way, which is fine, right? Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But especially in comparison to like The Outsider or If It Bleeds, this kind of just goes back to just like, if you like true crime, you'll probably like this book. I'm not super into crime. And the other part that I think is not super appealing is the COVID tie-ins. Like, I get that that's when King wrote this, and I think he writes COVID pretty well, but he really just it felt a little ham-fisted in the book. Like, he slams it home. It's COVID, and you will never forget that it's COVID. And with that, he brings his politics into it. And, as someone that aligns with Stephen King's politics, I think he writes both sides of the politics well. You can clearly tell what side he's on. But I think he even writes the other side well. And so again, while I think he wrote it well, I just don't necessarily want. I think it just dates the book, which is fine. I guess that's what it's trying to do, but because it is unique in the way that it's a private investigator trying to operate in COVID times, which is unique. But I just don't know if it's appealing. I wasn't excited by that, and I don't know how many people would be. So, yeah, nothing special. Honestly, I think the standout of this book, the thing that makes it the most unique, are the villains. That's my favorite part about this book. So, yeah, 3 out of 5 for appeal. Going into rhythm, this scored a 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, or I may have said it earlier, but I think this would have almost worked better as a novella. I think this, because it's a decent sized book. I think it's about, 450 pages. I think it could have been 250 or 300 and been good. There's not a ton of like repetition or bloat necessarily. I think that's just where Holly's sweet spot is. I just don't know if it without that supporting character, right? Like in The Outsider, I think Ralph carries that weight in a good way. And here, Barbara almost did. She just didn't quite. And so some of the pacing felt a little strange sometimes. And I think it slowed down a bit. Once we got Barbara, I think that really picked up the pace. But yeah, I mean, it reads quick, right? It's Stephen King. It goes, it's smooth as butter. I never found myself like on a page for too long or anything, but I did find myself being like, okay, like maybe in the first half, like, all right, let's get the, it was mostly focused on Holly and her relationship with her mother in the first half, and that stuff is good, it's well written, but the setup is for this case that she's trying to solve, and I just don't feel like that the ball really got rolling on that for a very long time, and there wasn't anything else to distract me from it that I was interested in. Once Barbara came in and we got her storyline, then I was very happy to be with Barbara and Olivia, and like I was okay with putting the case on pause while I dealt with that, because it was an interesting relationship between the two of them, and I cared about Barbara and I wanted to know about that. But yeah, I do think the pacing was only okay. The plot I also think was only okay. I liked it, but it just wasn't anything like stand out for me. I wasn't like itching at any point. It just was an enjoyable plot. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. And then lastly, feeling. This is another strong suit of Stephen King. I think it's always underestimated of like how much Stephen King can make you feel, whether that's good or bad feelings, or just the whole range of emotions. He's really good at it. And there's some really tense moments in this book. There's some fearful moments in this book, and there's some strong emotional moments in this book, and I think he did that really well. I still don't think it, not to a degree that maybe I'm used to with Stephen King, or to the amount. So this also scored a 3.5 out of 5 for me. All the relationships I felt were strong and yeah, believable, and I cared for the characters, and I feared for the characters sometimes, but nothing extraordinary or anything. So 3.5 out of 5. So those are my 4 scores for believable, appeal, rhythm, and feelings. And I will give my final score, which is the average of those 4, which ended up being a 3.68, which I always round up to the next 0.25. So Holly is getting a 3.75 out of 5 from me. Good, very good. Not extraordinary, not incredible, not the best book I've ever read. In fact, this would probably be very close to the bottom of my Stephen King books that I've read. Which, a 3.75 being the floor is nothing to sneeze at. So I'm still very happy with the book. But I guess I'll talk about some of that stuff in a bit. But so let me give you my pitch. If you like true crime, if you love true crime, and you like good, strong character work, and you like a good villain, I think you'll really like this book. If you want nothing to do with like the politics and just like the memory of COVID, don't pick up this book, because it is just riddled with it. You can't get through a page, it seems like. That's not true, but I'm exaggerating. But it does feel like it. COVID is mentioned often. It is an integral part of this story, and that can be frustrating. So, and then, of course, if you don't like Holly, if you've somehow read this far and don't like Holly, this is not going to change your mind at all. If you didn't like some of the controversial parts of The Outsider and If It Bleeds, I don't want to say what those controversial parts are, but there's usually a moment in those books where someone was like, oh, well, I didn't think it was going to go that way. Well, if you didn't like that, you'll still probably like this, because this doesn't really touch those areas. It's just like a tried and true crime book, and that's what it is. So that's my pitch. And so now I'm going to get into spoilers. So if you've not read this book, I invite you to kindly leave. I appreciate you watching, and hopefully you read the book, and if you enjoy it, let me know, and we can talk about it, because I love talking about Stephen King. So let's go back to characters. Normally, when I go into the spoiler territory, we're really only looking at characters and the rhythm, because appeal, we don't really need. Appeal and feeling, it's like maybe in feeling, but those are more like plot points, right? So for character work, I had a very conflicting, as much as I love the villains in this book, the Harrises, and they're great villains. I found myself towards the end not so I think what made them so appealing as villains. So if you've read the book, if you're here, you probably read the book. They are cannibals. They are kidnapping people and then like basically eating them to rejuvenate themselves and alleviate themselves of their elderly illnesses like sciatica and Alzheimer's and so on and so forth. And it's working. And so what made them so appealing to me in the first, like, I don't know, 4/5 of the book is like, that's not true actually. The first like half of the book is that they are just these two very loving people. They love each other. They truly do. They're a great husband and wife. And I think that's what made it so horrifying to me, is that they just want to stop hurting. And unfortunately, they found that this is the way. This is like an unheard of cure. And so yes, it's still messed up that they're kidnapping and murdering and harvesting humans, but like, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, well, they're doing it. I don't want to say they're doing it for a good reason, but like, it almost feels like they are. Like he writes them in such a lovable way. You kind of like them. And then at a certain point, Emily Harris becomes like super racist and awful and just horrible and psychotic. And I thought it was good. I didn't mind that, right? Like, I know that Stephen King's thing is like human beings are the real monsters. And yeah, they are the real monsters. But part of it would have made it even just more messed up to me and horrifying. That was what was so horrifying, is that beyond these horrifying, horrific murders and what they're doing, they're just normal, loving people. And like, they're doing what they absolutely have to do so they don't live their lives in total pain. And they don't, you know, I could understand that he's scared of losing of Alzheimer's, of losing the function of his brain. That's who you are, right? And so like, that's what makes it more horrifying to me, is that they're willing to go to this length, and that's scary. But then like, because yeah, I almost was not rooting for them, but like kind of rooting for them. And then she becomes this horrible person, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I just hate her now. And I don't know, it was so written really well, where you kind of find out that she's kind of been in charge this whole time. He just had some theories, and she was like, hey, well, let's go through with it. But then just the way she talks about other people, and yeah, she's just like super racist. And I mean, that's the easiest way to get you to hate someone, right? Let's just make them super racist, and like, I'm immediately like, oh, you're the bad guy, I hate you. And so, you know, it didn't feel like a cop-out or anything. It felt, once we got to that point and I got to see her interact with more people, I think she was very believable, right? That's why she scored so high. The believable section scored so high. It's still believable. I just was hoping it would go in a different direction. That's really it. Because yeah, that would have just been scarier to me, of them like getting caught up in this cycle of like, yeah, it's working, and not just the placebo effect and stuff like that, which is good too, because I think you know, I like the way that Holly uses that against them, especially Rodney, to like piss him off and make mistakes. So I thought that was good. And then Holly, with just dealing with her mom and her uncle and how they lied to her about her money, it was a really interesting like storyline, and I liked it. I thought it was good. You know, I think that is part of life, where sometimes parents just keep things from their children, and I like that we don't get all the answers, and that's okay, and that's real. You know, I think the way that Holly tries to cope with that is really interesting, especially with she almost has like a mantra. A new millionaire walks into a bar, and it's this joke she's trying to get out through this whole book. I don't know if that worked for me very well. I like the payoff for it, but I just didn't. I don't know. It was fine. It was fine. And then the other character work, like Jerome, was fine, but Barbara and Olivia's storyline, I thought, was like really the star of this book, other than the villains. I loved Barbara's storyline with her becoming a poet and meeting with Olivia and that relationship that they form. That could have been a little novella, take out Barbara. It doesn't even need to be Barbara Robinson. It could have just been, Jane Doe and meets, that's the whole story. It's just them and meeting and her mentoring this person. But it was nice that it was Barbara because I knew her, so I already was kind of attached to her. And I love that story and their relationship. I just thought it was so good and wholesome and sad, but also just felt real, right? I do feel like it was kind of like, oh, I guess Barbara's a writer too now. It felt a little maybe shoot in, but once I got over that hump, it was fine. All the rest of it felt real. And, like, I guess I could get on board, like, well, Jerome's writing, so maybe she was writing in secret, and the poetry and yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually. So other than the villains at first, those were probably my favorite. That was my favorite relationship. Holly is just like the glue that keeps everything else together. It's never going to give me like a super high, her as a character, but she's necessary to keep, to hold everything else in place. She's there so other people can shine, I think. So yeah, that's it for believable. And then really into rhythm. There were some great plot points and some great moments. And bleeding and feeling will kind of bleed into this. Like, some standout moments for me was the end with Jerome when he talked to Vera Steinman. That conversation was really emotional for me. I thought it was really sad and it hit hard. And just, yeah, with her dealing with her being an alcoholic and her overcoming that and just asking Jerome to stay with her. And, like, it doesn't have to be. That's what I love about Stephen King, because it's real, right? Like, just because there's like a man and a woman, there doesn't have to be like a romantic love, but there can still be a love, right? I think there is, like, they had formed a bond and a deep love for each other, even though we barely got that much time with them. I think they just formed that connection and had this deep love for each other, not romantic. And I love that kind of love when I read it. I think he writes it so well that, yeah, all he needs to give me is, I don't know, maybe they had a total of like 10 pages in this book or something, but, like, man, that part hit me hard. And then obviously Olivia's death hit hard as well because of Barbara, especially when she starts, like, reciting certain lines from her poetry. That was a great moment. The real moment that, like, got me, not sad or anything, but, like, so what they do to these people after they kidnap them, it's horrific. But I think the whole book you're kind of led to believe, they make it very clear there's, like, the wood chipper that they kind of put them through, but they eat the parts first, and that's kind of where they discard the rest. But, like, I don't know, maybe I don't know why I thought this, but I just assumed they, like, somehow just put them to sleep and, like, killed them, basically, like, OD'd them or something, and then harvested whatever they needed before they discarded it. But then with the main girl, what's the person they're looking for? Something Dahl. Bonnie Dahl. When we finally get her experience with them, she just, like, wakes up on the operating table and she's like, "What are you going to do to me?" And they're just like, "We're going to eat you." And she just starts screaming. I'm like, wait, do they eat her? Do they, like, harvest their kidnappees alive? Because that's horrifying. And I mean, it's already horrifying, but that made it. I'm like, were they eating them alive? Like, just killing them? Why? That part didn't make any sense to me. Like, I get the whole, like, they feed them the liver because then it activates their liver, and who knows, it's one of those things that, like, I have no knowledge of. So I'm like, oh, maybe that's true, or, like, it's just total bullshit. I don't know. And clearly the actual effects on eating the humans was the placebo, but I don't know if eating another liver, like, activates a liver. I don't know. But, like, I just don't know why they needed to eat them alive, because that really is what turned them into, like, psychopaths. I mean, they're already psychopaths, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, there was that moment where I'm like, well, they're just doing what they got to do. Not that it's okay, but, like, I can understand why these characters are doing it. But then at what point where they're like, you know what? Let's do it while they're alive. because what's that? I just don't get what that's doing. So that was a really interesting moment. And then other than that, I'm trying to think of any other like real moments that stood out. Oh, Holly like brutally murdering them. I wasn't expecting that at all. I just wasn't expecting her to kill them. I was expecting her to figure out a way out. What I really thought was going to happen was she gets kidnapped. She gets got, Holly. She gets captured, which everything leading up to that was so tense with her like going there. But then like Rodney had already seen her going there. And Emily like does the fake out, but then Holly calls her bluff, but then Ronnie gets there, and then they shock her, and then she's in the cage. And I'm like, how's she gonna get out of this? But the whole lead up to this with Barbara and Olivia is everything's being put into place for Barbara to figure it out, right? She meets with Emily Harris, and Emily is like super tech savvy, but then when you find out what Bonnie was doing for Emily, you find out that Emily was faking being like computer illiterate and so on and so forth. And like Olivia tells Barbara how like Emily was racist and like wanted to be rid of this person that ended up being one of the people to disappear. And like, so all these like seeds were planted for Barbara to figure it out. And I was like, Barbara's going to get there and save her, which she doesn't. She doesn't even get there and save her in time, which is a nice little like, I don't mind it. By me, I just wasn't expecting it, especially like for Holly to like trick them. Then she just absolutely rocks them. I'm trying to remember. It's been a minute. One of them she like I think slams into like the cage, and then maybe she just shoots the other or something like that. I can't or stabs the other. Oh yeah, she gets one with the earring. The earring, she like cuts his throat. Oh yeah. That was good. That was a good moment. The earring finally coming back was great. And so yeah, I don't know if this is setting up for like Barbara to take over in Never Flinch. I don't really want that. I don't know what I want out of Never Flinch, except for I do want one thing. Bring back Ralph Anderson. For the love of God. He's such a good character, and him and Holly's relationship is so good. I don't want whatever his name is, Pete. Get Pete out of here. He's barely in this book, and he's just coughing the whole time because he's got COVID. I'm like, I just don't care. Of all, her relationship with Bill was so good. Her relationship with Ralph was so good. And then you give me Pete. Like, and then, yeah, I just don't know what the point of this was other than to set up for Barbara taking over. Like, Holly, I think, wants to be out at this point. Although I will talk about the ending was really good, right? She has her moment where she's like, I could just walk away right here. The phone's ringing, basically. The phone for Finders Keepers. And it rings a couple times, and she's like, I'm not going to answer it. And then on that last ring, she can't. There's too many monsters out there. She's got to stop. So I think she does and doesn't want to quit. But I think, she's getting older, too. So I think at some point she's going to have to hand off the reins, especially because I think King isn't going to be... I think he's going to want to give her a good ending, and that will be passing off the rope to Barbara, is my guess. I don't know. We'll see how good it is. I won't say I'm too excited for Never Flinch. About 3/4 of the way through this book, I started reading Revival by Stephen King, and Revival made me realize and remember that crime is not my favorite thing to read. I was almost tricked by Stephen King because his character writing's so good. I'm like, you can write about whatever you want. I'm in. But then reading some other King, I was like, oh yeah, this is the King. This is the King that I like reading. So like, I'm ready for a break. But I'm also, you gotta respect what King wants to write. At the very, if this is, like I said, if this is the worst he's gonna put out, I'm here for it. And I am going to be buying every book he puts out on release until he dies, because I think he's probably my favorite author. So that's what I'm doing. So yeah, that's my spoiler part review of Holly. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're made it this far, you've probably read it as well. So let me know what you think. I appreciate you being here, and we will see you next time here on Hobby Vomit. Thank you so much. I'm Matt. Goodbye.